Let's link up with Krista on the FYX. She's a wellness coach with a focus on mental well-being and physical strength.
What is up, guys? It is Coach Krista, and I am back on our latest episode of The FYX. Today, we are linking up with Gab Bolin. Am I saying your last name correctly? Should have asked.
You are.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I got it. And she is an online fitness coach, primarily a coach with a company called Studio. And she has made a big transition this past year, like so many other fitness professionals, into the digital space. So that will definitely be a topic of conversation on today's episode. Gab has been in the fitness industry for a while as a personal trainer and is also a confidence coach, which she just shared with me before we hit the record button. So I'm super excited to dive into that a little bit more, because it sounds like you're changing or kind of really thinking through how you want to weave that into your career. So I'm excited to see what some of your ideas are if you're willing to share. But with that, I'm going to give you the floor. And as I mentioned, I start every show off the same exact way. First question: who the heck is Gab? Why should we care about you? And what do you want to tell the world in 45 seconds or less?
All right. Awesome. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me, Krista. My name is Gab. I am a fitness professional. I am a confidence coach, and I actually began my career as a professional actor. So cool. I went to school. I have a BFA in theater and performing arts. I did every television show in New York City that you can think of, until I woke up one morning and realized that I absolutely hated it. I did not want to do it anymore. And I was so caught up in this toxic culture of, you have to be thin enough, you have to be pretty enough, don't eat that, don't do this, go burn calories, because it became about what you weigh and not about how talented you were. And so I woke up one morning and I said, I hate this. I don't want to live this way. I was petrified of what people were going to think if I left the industry, because obviously growing up, people are like, you know, it's too hard, don't do it, you're never going to make it. And you're like, yes, I will, I'm going to do it, I'm going to push through. And I just kind of said, you know what? I don't want to live this way. I had an eating disorder. I was miserable. I was sick. And I just said, you know what? I'm done. And then I kind of started exploring fitness for like how it made me feel. Like maybe I didn't have to go burn 1 million calories. Maybe I could just go and try to feel good. And it changed my life. I became a personal trainer. Then I found group fitness, which sort of coupled the performing aspect and like being in front of a room and you know, all that stuff. And fell in love with it and just never looked back. And so now my mission is to help other women kind of discover fitness, not about the numbers or what they weigh or what they look like, but about how good it makes you feel to be free of the stress and pressure that we put on ourselves.
I love it. And I love the label of a confidence coach. You know, I think there's a lot of transition happening right now, probably because of digital and COVID and people really pushing to create a niche and carve out their section online in a pretty saturated industry. Not that that's a bad thing, but I'm seeing a lot of changes to the labels that trainers, coaches, fit pros give themselves. Like one I'm seeing a lot right now that I love in the nutrition space is nutrition mentor instead of nutrition coach. And I really like the implication of that, because it kind of weaves together mental health. And I think that certainly speaks to a lot of what you're talking about. And I love what you said about group fitness really tying together the performing piece, because I'm not sure if you've heard this before or how much you study any of the business side of SoulCycle, but they have actually said often when they're hiring, they really go for people who have dance backgrounds and Broadway backgrounds, performance backgrounds, because they're like, we can teach you how to ride the bike, but we probably can't teach you how to have presence. And it can be taught. That's actors are taught that, but I think for a lot of people, that's something you're innately born with, and just that like spunk and attitude and being confident to bring it to the table in everything that you do. So I think that's really interesting, and that crossover makes so much sense to me, for sure.
Yeah. And it really kind of lent itself to my ability to make my class into a story. We're like,
Sure.
we can talk about burning calories and we can do intervals and whatever, but how are you going to feel when you leave? What lessons are you taking with you? You know, what are you going to apply to the rest of your day or the rest of your week? And so I kind of had it figured out from the beginning. Like, this isn't just a playlist. This is a story. This is a soundtrack. Like, I want it to be an experience. And that kind of gave me a lot of success right out of the gate. And it was really just because I had such a strong background in performing. I tease my friends all the time who are like doctors and lawyers or whatever, that I use my college degree more than they do.
That's so funny.
Just in how I weave it into my classes.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. And before we get into more about your professional experience and how you navigated all of that, because that brought up so many questions, let's keep it light to start. Tell me your go-to coffee order and what do you like to sip on in the morning?
So every morning I am completely vegan. So every morning
Cool.
I pour myself a cup of coffee with this horrific, terrible for you, almond-based, like soy, vanilla, loaded with sugar creamer. And I always say, like, I will eat whatever I need to eat to perform well as an athlete, but like
You're not going to give up on that. Yeah.
Hell no. And then lately when I order coffee out, I've been really into matcha lattes, like soy matcha lattes. I don't really like matcha like in general, but whatever they like when they load it up with sugar and they try to
when
make
they
it, like,
do it in the coffee
whatever,
shop. Yeah.
I'm solid. So I've actually been trying to avoid ordering them because it became like kind of a habit.
What's your favorite coffee shop in New York? Do you have one?
So I've been really into Gregory's lately.
I love Gregory's. Somebody else I interviewed, I'm not sure if you know him, Brian Bea. He runs Step Brothers with a good friend of his, Calvin. And he mentioned Gregory's when I interviewed him and asked him that question. I feel like it's a good like OG spot. Their cold brew is really, really good.
Yeah, they've been popping up all over the place too. I remember when they were like a one-off.
Yeah. And now I feel like there's every several blocks you could walk in New York, you'll find one on a corner.
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. Very cool. All right. So let's talk about your background and tell me, so let's kind of start today and then we can work backwards. Tell me about Studio for the average person who has never come across you guys before. Pretty large social media following, but I think I even just stumbled on it. And I'd love to know, was Studio a digital first type company, or were you kind of with them previously and then you went through the process of the conversion over to online? Because for background for anybody listening to this, if you don't jump on and look up their Instagram account right away, Studio is similar to Mirror and Peloton and other brands like that. Even what's that one, like Fight something with the punching bag, and
Fight Camp,
and then Tempo. I would say you guys are kind of like a mixture of all of those because you have so many different types of workouts. So tell me about that. Is Studio digital first, or was the newest and latest concept born out of COVID?
Yeah, so Studio has been digital. So Studio has been around for, I believe, about 4 to 5 years. I have not been with the company from day one.
Okay.
I'm a relatively recent hire. But Studio was actually digital like well before it was cool to be digital. They actually started as an audio app where you would go on the treadmill and you would run with them, and there would be just a voice in your ear telling you, okay.
Oh, kind of like Ladder? Is it like that?
Yes.
Have you seen Ladder?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool.
So they were around for a long time. Then they transitioned to video, where they started to do treadmill classes where you could see the instructor.
Okay.
And then they decided once COVID hit, they were going to branch out into other modalities. So now we have cycling, we have rowing, we have boxing, yoga, treadmill, strength training, kind of everything that you could ever want. So everything is on the app. It's available for you on your phone, on your iPad. And we are also in the process of shipping out our first orders of what we call the home studio, which is very similar to a mirror, where it's a big piece of glass that projects the class. And the cool thing about Studio is that whereas a company like Peloton, you have to buy the hardware that they sell if you want the connectivity of like the leaderboard and stuff like that. Yeah. Studio uses Bluetooth to take any kind of treadmill or bike or equipment that you have and connects it via Bluetooth to the leaderboard. So you can be on a
So it's really more of a software company.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So whatever kind of treadmill you have, as long as it's Bluetooth capable, you can connect to our leaderboard.
Cool.
So you get to decide whether you want to spend a shit ton of money on a treadmill, or if you kind of want to go for like a lesser dollar amount item. And then you can still connect and have the same experience. So it's
do you pay that monthly like a subscription fee to the app then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And then the hardware that you get is kind of up to you, and it depends on your price range.
That's awesome. And do you know more on the business side? Do you know how many users you guys have right now? Do they give you that info?
I'm not positive, but I know that our trajectory is like we're doubling in users every 6 months. So
Wow.
it's growing. Yeah.
That's awesome. And how did you personally find them? Because I know you mentioned you're a newer hire for the company. Did they seek you out? Was it a COVID push because your business model had to change?
So it's actually kind of an interesting story. So they were looking for instructors to take on treadmill and cycling. And prior to this, indoor cycling was my bread and butter. That was my career path.
Okay, cool.
So when COVID hit, obviously I was not teaching indoor cycling classes anymore. And I was kind of like, okay, what do I do now? You know, like the fitness professional sort of existential crisis once COVID hit. So I am a marathon runner. I love to run, big time runner, never really did anything with it professionally because I was very much all cycling. So I kind of had this thought where like, what if I took my cycling class structure, right? The way that I motivate, the things that I say, the way that I make a playlist, and did it audio for running, because during COVID, you could still go outside and go for a run. So if my clients can't be riding with me, maybe they could take my voice in their ear and go outside and go for a run. So I started recording these guided runs, and I actually did 80 hours of material, sold them, did really, really well. People were buying my programs from all across the country. It really kind of blew up relatively quickly. And then I found on a job listing that studio was looking for people who had experience with indoor cycling, with running, and with these sort of like apps or programs rather, where you are, using your voice and kind of using storytelling to guide a workout. And I was like, okay, well, that's exactly what I've been doing. So I sent them some of my guided runs and a couple of my cycling classes, and they were like, all right, that's it. We want you.
That's so awesome. I love that you tell me more about what it was like for you to just go ahead by yourself and record all of those runs. Like, let's talk about the mechanics and how did you do it? What kind of software did you use? Where did you disseminate it as a platform for people to purchase? Because, a lot of people as fitness coaches, it's tricky because you kind of want to jump on and do the next thing that everyone else is doing, but you also have to stay in your lane in terms of knowing your capability. And just because you're a Fit Pro and everyone else has an app doesn't mean you should go and try to figure out how to build your own app. So how did you approach that?
Well, I will tell you that I am definitely like a play it safe. I tend to be a little bit pessimistic when it comes to things like that, where I'm like, nobody's going to buy that. It's never going to work. Yeah. And it was really my husband that was like, you need to do this.
Just try.
He was like, what do you have to lose? You know that there are people that will at least try it and be interested. So let's give it a shot. So he is very technologically savvy. I am not. And so when we started, I literally have a video. It's the funniest thing. It's me in the parking garage across the street from my apartment building, running in circles, just talking and recording it into this app called Audio Bridge, where you can kind of layer two tracks on top of one another.
Okay.
And it's literally just me running in circles, going like, all right, guys, we're gonna go a little faster. 3, 2, 1, let's go. And I put it up on SoundCloud, and I just kind of said, here you go, guys. What do you think? And people loved it.
That's so awesome.
And it was like, all right, this is it. And so then we kind of transitioned, and I was like, what if instead of going outside and running, because I live near a train, so I was like the freaking train and all the cars and the honking and whatever. Mm-hmm. I was like, what if we just kind of kept it inside? And like, what if I wasn't running? What if I was just narrating?
Yeah, just kind of like, and for you, I'm sure it wasn't as necessary with your acting background for you to have to run to act it out, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. And I realized like people didn't need to hear me
panting
out of breath with them. Right. Like that wasn't my job. They weren't like, oh, I suspect you're not working that hard. Like they didn't need me to be doing it with them. They just needed to know what to do. So we moved everything, all of our recording equipment, into my walk-in closet. And I sat on the floor in my closet and I recorded, and it was hours. It was 80 hours in total. I mean, it was insane. And then every time I finished the class, my husband would pull it up on Audacity and edit every single track. And there would be times when I would be like, oh, never mind, like I screwed that up, or let's go back and let's try it again. And he would fix it all. We actually have like a 15-minute like blooper reel of stupid shit that I said, which is really, really funny. But it was a shit ton of work but it was unbelievable how many people were like desperate for more and were purchasing them. And so we hosted them on my website.
Okay.
To go back and answer your question.
How much did you sell? Did you sell it as like a weekly package, or how did you structure it in terms of selling it?
Looking back, I wish we had structured it differently, but I made training calendars, and I said, okay, here's the program for a 5K.
Like a running challenge, like a
5K.
running calendar. Yeah.
Exactly. Here's a 10K. Here's a half marathon. Here's a full marathon. And depending upon the program that you purchased, that was how many runs you got. And then the calendar would tell you which one to do on which day.
Okay.
And then essentially you would have access to this private playlist on SoundCloud for however long the calendar was. So if it was a 5K, you had, 60 days or whatever it was. And then after that, your access would be revoked and you would have to pay to renew. So it was interesting. And I think that, now looking back, like I have a better understanding of kind of people, not everybody wants to train for something. A lot of people would rather have like a playlist that they can choose from depending upon, how much time they have or whatever. Yeah. But at the time it felt like offering kind of a more holistic package was the right answer. But there were people who were buying them just to have them, they would buy the full marathon and they had no intention of running a marathon. They just wanted options.
Sure. That's amazing.
But
are you still doing that now, or no? Have you paused that since you moved over to the studio?
Yeah. So right now, based on my contract with Studio, I can't sell those
because it's basically like the same product. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. But I do still have them. There are a few people who purchased a marathon that had the access for a full year, so they're kind of approaching the end of their package. So some people still have them. But it was incredible, and it was really the first time that I had done something that was totally and completely solo, and thought to myself, like, I could monetize this even further. Like I could take this to another step and I could make it better. And it was intoxicating because prior to that, I had kind of been, other than when I began my career as a personal trainer and I was kind of just doing, one-off clients on my own, it was the first time that I ever really felt like I didn't need a corporate umbrella, right, to keep me safe. And it was amazing.
So why do you, I've talked about this with some other guests that I've had on my show, just because of people moving into online. For you, from like a psychological and comfort standpoint, what do you think it was about having that corporate backing that made you more confident versus then trying to go ahead and do it by yourself?
So the honest answer to that question is that I am a very ambitious person. And I think that having a structured ladder to climb makes me feel like I am moving in the right direction, right? So I was working for Cycle Bar, which is a pretty big franchise.
Yeah, I love Cycle Bar. I used to live in Charlotte, and it's huge down there.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Some of my favorite fitness instructors ever. You may know her because she is a master instructor. Do you know Lauren Wilson? She goes by Lolo.
I do. I know Lolo very well.
Yeah, she's one of my really good friends. She's amazing. And
she's wonderful.
Lauren has, I'm going to send this to her when we air it. I've told her this many times, so she knows this. When I needed, so I used to work at Burn Boot Camp, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with them because they're not really in this area, but whenever I wanted to go work out and I needed some inspiration to then take quotes to my own class, I always went to her class because she's so good at that. So good. And I've told her that so many times. And for her, it seems so effortless. And she just has an amazing backstory of her personal life and her dad being in the hockey scene. It's really amazing. Yeah. She's really good for sure. Cycle Bar has a very deep bench of talent. I've never been to a class at the studio in Charlotte that I went to in Midtown Charlotte. Every class was awesome. All of the instructors are amazing people, both on and off the bike. It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Exponential is a great company. I'm actually doing my Pilates training with Club Pilates right now, which is under the Exponential umbrella.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, they really are phenomenal. And so, for me, that was sort of where I thought, that I wanted to be and to kind of
Yeah.
stay, where it was
Mhm.
like I was an instructor and then I became a lead instructor and then master
Want to
instructor
become
was right around
master.
the
Yeah.
corner.
Mhm.
Right. And so it felt like, okay, this is safe and this is just what I'm going to do. And then obviously like the whole rug kind of got ripped out from under us during COVID,
Mhm.
where it was like, now, you know, there are no more opportunities. There are no more classes, like, because it is a franchise, each individual location is owned and
It was up
operated
to them.
differently.
Yeah, I know.
Right. So
And
it was very like,
I listened to an interview with Row House is under Exponential too. And they own so many brands. I don't know if most people realize that, but I was listening to a podcast with the woman who opened the Row House in Charlotte. She opened like in the week of COVID, like shutting everything down.
yeah,
And she did give them a compliment on the mobile experience that they then created, because they did do it pretty fast. But it's like a pass, right? And you get, I think, and you get access to, like, you get the pass, like, regardless of where you were a member between Club Pilates, Cycle Bar, like, you can have access to any of their offerings, which
yeah,
is pretty interesting. I think
yeah,
it's almost like their own like mini class pass within inside the Exponential brand.
yeah,
But yeah, I know the ones in Charlotte, like, they just completely had to shut down for such a long time.
yeah,
Yeah, so I
yeah.
get it.
It was definitely sort of like a forced pause, where it was like, all right, well, that trajectory is TBD now, potentially forever, right? Who knows? So what am I going to do? And I sort of was forced to look at myself outside of just, you know, the cycle bar experience, where it
Mhm.
was like, you know, I started realizing like I've run 10 marathons. Like I love to run, and I'm completely not utilizing that portion of my professional experience, or even just like the joy of it. Um, to use in my career. You know, I was just cycling. It was like, maybe I'm able to do other things outside of just this bubble that I've kind of found myself locked inside. And because of, you know, my ambitious nature, like for me, it was master instructor or bust. Like that was what I was going for. And it was something that we had discussed. It was something that I knew my name was on the table for. And it was so close that I had kind of lost sight of all these other things that were out there that I could do, you know?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, I will say, like, I was listening to another podcast that was, it was the same podcaster who had interviewed the Row House owner. And he made a point, like, that type of group fitness, it will come back. Like, I think he
Yeah.
made the comparison to, like, the world survived the bird flu and other types of viruses, and even just economic crises. All the stuff came back, right? And it
Yeah.
will come back, but it's just a matter of when, and you can't just like sit and hope and wait and then get behind on what
Yeah.
everybody else
Yeah.
is trying to speed up on. But I do really love your point about the fact that, like, you had other things you were passionate about, and it wasn't as if you worked in a box gym where they did offer different types of workouts, that you could have combined both,
Right.
So
Right. And when the opportunity for me to be back in front of a camera came up, it was sort of like, wow, you know, like I had almost forgotten how much I loved that.
mhm, the
Because my
performance
career was
piece.
in television, you
Yeah.
know, like I was not a stage actor where you would kind of liken that to a group fitness class. It was very much the opposite, where it was like, I haven't been on camera in so long. It might be fun to kind of explore that
Yeah.
option also, you know?
That's cool. So tell me
Yeah.
more about I did want to ask about the mechanics of studio. Tell me more about your guys' recording process. I know today we're recording this, it's a Tuesday, and you don't record today, but what is kind of your guys' cadence calendar? How many classes are you recording? I assume you probably stay like a couple weeks or a month ahead on the content. What does that look like for you? What's your schedule
Yes.
like? How does that
Yeah.
schedule compare to now? Like, think about your schedule at Cycle Bar and what that was like versus what your schedule is like now.
It's two completely different
So
worlds.
different, right? Yeah.
100%. So typically each instructor records about 3 to 4 days a week, just depending upon like the content structure and what it is that we're putting out. Everybody has their main focus, right? So my main focus is cycling. I am one of 2 cycling instructors. So the majority of what I do is on the bike. However, I also teach treadmill and I teach strength training. So my main focus being cycling means that the majority of my content is going to be cycling each week. But roughly each instructor records about an hour of content per day. Now that could be 10-minute class, or I'm sorry, 6 10-minute classes, or it could be,
okay.
1
So you
hour
guys
long
do
class.
have those options, like the short rides that like Peloton has, where it's only like, hey, 15 minutes. You do that too. Okay.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yep. Yeah. So it's just kind of been structured that each instructor probably has about 60 minutes worth of like energy and whatever, because we do the full class. Like it is not like you get to stop and kind of talk. Like you're really in it the whole time. So 60 minutes tends to be the sweet spot before you start fading and feeling kind of crappy. So I do about an hour, 3 to 4 times a week, depending. And it is completely full throttle, like go, go, go. So if it's cycling, I'm riding the whole class. If it's running, I'm running the whole class. But we do series, we do programs just like at Peloton where you could do like a couch to 5K. I have a series of all Y2K music where everything is music from 99 to 2009, which I love. And then I have something called a Lightning 15, which is a strength training class where it's full body, 15 minutes at a time. So it's a really hard and fast 15 minutes. But it's fascinating. You're kind of trading off. Like when I worked at Cycle Bar, I was teaching 13, 14 classes a week. I was just constant. And so now I'm teaching far less, but I'm doing a lot more of it. And it's a lot of different, modalities. So like the running, the cycling, the strength training is very different compared to like just cycling because your body gets so used to it. So it's definitely been a change, though I do feel like I have a lot more free time now.
That's really cool. Yeah, I kind of expected you to say that because I was curious about what kind of demand they put on you in terms of how often you're recording and how much content you're recording at once, because it is so different. Like I have to say that's personally, I love group fitness so much that I have not really wanted to market myself as a like online personal trainer via Zoom. It just doesn't get me excited. I just don't want to do it. And it's also a lot of time, and people don't understand that. Like the amount of time that goes into writing the workout for the person, then scheduling the Zoom, you got to get on 5-10 minutes before so you're ready. Then like, you say it's a 45-minute workout, but by the time they stretch and blah, blah, and like, you're like, okay, I got to go. Your time is up. So I charge a really high rate for that because it's not as easy to scale that type of service as my nutrition coaching is. And I have a very specific process that I follow with every single client. Everyone gets the same exact experience. So I like that idea. And I would love to know, as a segue into that, what has it been like recording? And I'm sure you tap into your TV experience personally, but what has it been like recording when there's nobody on the other side, like doing the workout and giving you that energy?
Yeah, it's a completely different world. And
how do you prepare for that?
Oof. It really does go back to kind of that storytelling idea where a lot of times when I would teach a live class with people in the room, it was sort of like, I'm going to feel out the vibe of the room and I'm going to feel out like what I think people need. And now I kind of have to go in with like a preemptive sort of, okay, this class is going to be about X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And of course, like it has to be real. It has to be rooted in the truth. It has to be authentic. I can't just be like, today's going to be about, getting over your fears. Because if that doesn't mean anything to me, that it's going to come across.
Right, exactly. Like you were just like, you were faking it. Yeah.
Right. So I really tap in a lot more now, probably than ever, to my own personal experiences and what I'm feeling day to day, because I don't have anybody to pull from. Like nobody is coming up to me before class and saying, I had a really tough day yesterday. So I've got to kind of imagine that there's somebody out there who needs that. But I'm also very lucky that Studio has a very active community on social media. So I hear from a lot of people that take my classes, kind of things that they're going through and their experiences. And so I'm able to use that. But it requires a lot more sort of giving because you are receiving nothing. There's nobody in the room kind of giving you that energy back. So it's every time you feel like you need that sort of reassurance, you've just got to give more. And it was difficult at first, but now I think, just like with anything, it gets a little bit easier. And I feel very much rooted in their community where it doesn't feel as empty anymore.
And what do they do to really cultivate that community within the application? Is there like a space that's kind of almost like a Facebook group or some sort of group like that? Like what does that look like?
Yeah. So in the app, there's a group called Tribes. And it's sort of like a social media feed where you can post what you did and you can kind of talk about how
keep
it was,
you accountable, like an accountability
yes,
group.
Yeah. They also do have a Facebook group for members, for people who kind of want to go a little bit further in that connectivity. So Tribes is kind of limited in how many characters you can use. It's more of like a Twitter rather than a Facebook. So they do have a Facebook group, and obviously everybody kind of reaches out on Instagram, and there's a lot of different sort of circles.
And what kind of requirements do you have to interact with people there between the Tribes and the Facebook group, or is most of your presence and impact on that community just through your space on Instagram?
So there is no real mandate for kind of interacting, and there are some instructors who really don't. Because of my need to kind of have that reason for that class, or kind of like needing to feel ingrained in the community in order to give my best class, I need it.
It's almost like your research.
I want to know.
That's how you figure out what's going to hit for people.
Yeah, exactly. I can't just go in and assume that I know, what everybody wants to see that day. Like, I really want to know. And I'll ask questions too, like, how long do you want these classes to be? Like, what's your favorite length? Do you like it when we do treadmill before we touch the dumbbells, or do you want to do the dumbbells before you run? Like, I want to know that kind of stuff, so that at least I feel like when I get there and I'm recording my classes, I know somebody's interested in taking it afterwards,
Are you still in charge of your own music, just like you were creating your own playlist at Cycle Bar?
Yes. Yeah. Everything, the class programming and the playlist is entirely up to me.
Okay. And where do you get your inspiration for your music?
Oof, that's because you constantly need new music. I do a lot of stalking on Spotify, where like there are instructors from all over the country that I know from Cycle Bar. There are instructors that I know from Soul Cycle, and I'm just like, what are you listening to? And where? And then if I like a song, I'll go to that song radio and kind of break it down from there. And I'm always looking for new music. I also like to go. I have satellite radio in my car, and I play like satellite radio roulette, where I just put on like a random station and I'm like, all right, what is this? And I've oddly found like some really good stuff that way.
That's cool.
Just kind of, just getting outside of my comfort zone.
Did that stress you out in the beginning? So I always ask this question because I've never worked for a fitness company where I had to put my own playlist together. I worked at Pure Barre for a long time, and they gave you playlists, and it was obviously very musically driven. Like, you have to do the pulsing and the movement to the beat of that music. And if you fell behind, it actually messed up the rest of the class because the music timed out with how the sequence of the workout should go. But I didn't get to, like, we had like every month they sent us new playlists, and we only had to we could pick from those, or we could go like years back, and the owner had it on her iPod in the studio. So I always wonder, like, especially with Cycle, the music will really make or break the experience. So what was that like for you when you first started as an instructor compared to now that you've been doing this for a while? Is it a lot easier?
So I don't know that it ever gets easier. I think it gets easier because you are a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, when I first started, I was petrified to play a song that didn't have lyrics. Because like, what am I going to say? Like, what's just going to be awkward silence the whole time. But now I'm like, I'll do a 10-minute song.
And music can be so personal. So like, I think there's also the fear that people are going to like judge you and be like, oh, like, why did she pick that song? Right. Like, they love it doesn't mean everyone else is going to like it.
Oh, 100%. And even just like having a song that evokes something, and you're like, all right, I'm going to play this song, but that means I have to talk about, the meaning behind it. And then you're kind of like, what if they don't want to hear me talk about, love? What if they, or taking a chance? Like, what if they just want to have like a nice, easygoing, relaxing kind of day? But you learn to be, you learn to own your shit, like if I want to talk about this, if I want to play this type of song, then like, that's what we're going to do. And I'm just going to have to own it. And you can't apologize halfway through if it doesn't, go the way that you wanted it to.
Right.
That's
just got to roll with it.
Yeah.
Now, before we get into more of your personal coaching and kind of what you're seeing as a vision for the rest of your career and how that's changed with COVID, where do you see yourself in your relationship with studio? Like for you, you know, and I'm asking this question because of the comment that you made about being ambitious and like climbing this ladder with studio and its structure in terms of positions. It just really sounds like there's not necessarily like that master trainer kind of role. It's like you have your classes, you manage those. You're probably like the go-to cycling expert between you and the other instructor who teach that class, that type of workout. So when you signed on with studio and maybe now fast forward almost a full year, right? What do you envision for your future relationship with them? Where do you see it going?
Yeah. So this is kind of the big question that I ask myself every day where I'm like, all right, that clear path is gone. I opted for something that doesn't have that. So how do I kind of stomach that? And so what I've been able to do, and this has been, you know, kind of indicative of everything since COVID began. It's like, all right, I'm going to forge a path that is not dictated by a corporate company or like a corporate ladder. I'm going to forge a path that is controlled by what I want to do, what I want to represent, and what I want to offer. So I'm really, really enjoying the job and the company at Studio. And we'll see, you know, if it's where I'm meant to be, then I will stay and every day will feel wonderful. And if not, I will find another, you know, brand or company or whatever that is doing the same thing that is going to make me just as happy. And in the meantime, instead of trying to force that to happen or to kind of see the future with that, I'm working on building my own personal brand and, you know, offering things that prior, you know, in past lives, I've been so focused on the corporate culture that I haven't even stopped to think about. So for example, you know, this confidence coaching idea, like everything that I do is kind of built around this idea that if you don't have confidence, you don't have anything. So it's like outside of that role from studio, like what do I want to offer to the world? What do I want to represent? And so I'm sort of learning, you know, slowly to let the career path open itself up based on the opportunities that I want to explore that maybe are not, you know, one size fits all.
I love that. And we teed it up for the perfect segue because I wanted to use that as the transition into talking about your confidence coaching. And, you know, I think what you said about the focus on the corporate structure, I also felt in my own personal journey, the challenge I had in not developing my own programming and my own nutrition coaching while I was working in the corporate environment of fitness franchises like yourself. I like justified in my mind, and I think it came from a place of fear and scarcity mindset, but I justified in my mind that I didn't have time to I was working so many hours a week. Like I know yes, Cycle Bar, you had, 14, 15 classes is a lot because you were actually cycling most of the time. I was teaching 35 classes a week at the studio that I used to work at. And
oh my God,
that was we had over 60 classes on the schedule. So I was teaching almost half. It was at minimum of 25, but usually fell more into the 30s. And I was just exhausted and I wasn't doing the workout. So yeah, it was different, but I still showed up with a ton of energy and you can't fake that. And it's also very exhausting when you're dealing with your own bullshit to fake that everything's cool and everything's fine because over here I'm also managing this whole studio and our social media and there's so much work that goes into it, working with other staff, training other coaches. So for me, I was I don't think I can justify spending time on building this personal brand that I'm not getting paid for, when if I just work harder, I can make more commission from this other company, right? So I think that's definitely been a big shift that people have seen because now it's okay, well, you do have control and you can create what you want to create and how you want to create it. And I think that's really cool. I think you said it earlier yourself in talking about recording these running workouts. It was really amazing for you to see I can choose the direction I want to take this. I can decide what it looks like. No one has to tell me how to do it. And it's also scary, but that's also scary because you don't know if it's going to work, which you said. You were I didn't know if people were going to want to do this. So tell me how some of those feelings and ideas are now shaping what you envision for your confidence coaching. Let me ask it this way. Let's say you could do anything and you had no budget. What would your confidence coaching look like in terms of
Wow, that's a great question. So I think for me, just solely based on how I kind of came into this entire space, I would want it to be rooted in fitness, and in a very different way than like, maybe this is not your one and only workout. Maybe this is not something where you go on Zoom and you lift weights for an hour and then you go about the rest of your day. But I would want it to be something where your emotional strength is realized through your physical strength. And this idea of like, if you can do something physically that, last week you didn't think you could do, imagine what you can do in your real life when, you can go and ask for that raise, or you can leave that shitty relationship, or you can, take a risk that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise taken. And so I think that confidence is an abstract, right? It's an idea that you deserve, or that you are good enough, or that you are, justified in asking for more. But I think any kind of abstract is only an abstract until we can really put it into practice. And so I think confidence is a great idea, but when it's really rooted in something that you can measure, like, how many miles you can run or how much weight you can lift compared to maybe an old version of you, that's when you really see like this is real, and you have that sort of understanding, like, this may be hard, but I can do hard things.
Yeah, 100%. And I actually just, when you describe it and the point you made about it not looking like a workout, I actually can envision this for you as being like a course that somebody takes. Like,
yeah.
And you're not guiding them in fitness per se, but maybe their accountability or measuring the success of it has to do with like workouts in some way that maybe you don't write for them, but it's incorporated into the programming in some capacity. And it's more of like a mental health coaching with like journaling and value mapping and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
As how it's like a true program with tasks and asks and everything. But that's really cool. I think I actually have a friend that I would love to introduce you to. I had her on my podcast like 2 weeks ago. The episode's not out yet. But her name is Janie, and she has a really similar story to you. So she was not an actress. She was actually a singer-songwriter, but she was in the performing world, and then she wound up getting into fitness to supplement that in terms of income, and she tried to do both at the same time for years, and she got super burnt out, really hard mental health battle and a bunch of other stuff, and now she runs a company that I'll send to you because I feel like it kind of has a lot of similarities to what you're envisioning. It's called the Fierce Academy, but she spells fierce like FEAR, like fear.
Oh, cool.
And I think it originally, if I remember correctly, I talked to so many people, so I might be getting this part wrong, but it kind of like was born out of like a stage fright sort of idea and how to help people get over that. But then she realized that the messaging could be for anybody. It doesn't have to be somebody who's in the performing world. So it's like that confidence builder. And she actually wound up leaving her career in singing and songwriting. And then she developed this concept, became an ambassador for Under Armour, and that's her tie to the fitness world. But now she never pursued a degree. She went into some sort of like theater arts type program, and then she dropped out because she got picked up and really wanted to pursue performing like within the first 6 months of going to college. So now she's getting her degree in psychology. So it's really tying all of it together. It's a really cool story. Awesome. So I would love to introduce you guys because I think you could get some good ideas from her for sure. And I think that's like the coolest part about podcasting, the fitness profession in general. I'd love to know your perspective on this, and just kind of I'm sure you've stayed in touch with some of the other instructors that you worked with at Cycle Bar in terms of where they've landed and people trying to help each other. That's one of the really cool things that I've always appreciated about their brand, because I think that it's one of the studios that, even though I'm a coach myself, I've always felt super accepted in. Whereas other places I can go and they don't like that I train because it's like a threat for whatever reason. But I've never not gone to a Cycle Bar class, especially with people like Lauren and some other instructors that are no longer with them. So I'm not sure that you know them. But at the end of every class, they would always be like, I was usually one of a few instructors in the room, and they'd be like, go check out Krista at this gym. And I just really appreciate that. I think that's really special. So I'm curious, what does it mean to you to support other fitness people in a professional capacity now that so many of us are out on our own trying to just figure this out?
I could talk about this all day because when I left the performing industry, I was tired of feeling like I wasn't good enough or wasn't thin enough, right? And I was also tired of constantly having these battles with particularly other women, where it was like you walked into the casting room and you knew only one of you was going to walk out with the job. And so immediately you could feel like the daggers coming at you from other women. And that's just the nature of the industry, right? Like there's only one role and one of us, we're all blonde, we're all 5'4", we're all whatever, like we all wear the same size.
You basically look the same. Yeah.
Exactly. Which one of us is going to get it? And so you feel that tension and that sort of like, I hope you get hit by a bus on your way home, like that energy.
Yeah.
And so when I got into fitness, I was like, I want to get so far away from that feeling that like, whatever. And what I have found is that at some places you really do get away from it. But at some places you really don't. And it's crazy because
I've been kicked out of, since leaving Charlotte, I've been kicked out and going back there and visiting. And it's happened to me in New Jersey too. I've been kicked out or asked to not come back to multiple places. And it's been really frustrating in Jersey because I'm from here originally, but I moved away and then I moved back and I've been trying to find a gym. And every time I go in and I start talking to the other members or the instructor, they're like, oh, what do you do for work? And I always joke, what am I supposed to lie and say that I'm like a secret agent and I can't tell you what I do for a living?
Right. Yeah. And it's crazy because it happens between instructors too, where it's like you would think, at least in acting, there is one role and there's only one actress that's going to get it. But in fitness, it's like there are thousands of people that want to take classes and there are only X amount of spots in a class. And there's so much for everyone. There is no limit to we could all be successful and we're all very different. And it's not about us all being 5'4" and blonde and looking the same. You want to have that variety. And there are still people who think that if someone is coming to your class, that means they're not coming to my class. And so I need to be better than you, or I need to, you can't see my playlist, or you can't see my this or that, or don't come take my class. It's disgusting. And
I know, it really is.
It's not even rooted in something that makes sense. It is just insecurity.
100%.
And I honestly feel so sorry for those people because I've been involved in so many groups with instructors where it's check out the song that I found, you should use it. Or I did this really cool style of whatever today, you guys should go try it. And then there are people who are mine, you can't see it, get away. If you're successful, that means I'm a failure. And those people are lonely. And I've been there. I've lived that life and it is tragic. And I hope that they kind of get over that and figure it out. But this is such a big industry.
It is. And there's I always say, I made this comment at the very beginning of the show, it's saturated, but it's not a bad thing. I take the saturation as health and wellness is a $1 billion industry. People want to spend their money on it and they are going to find the people they relate to. And just because you don't relate to everyone doesn't mean you're bad at your job. Look at the Orange Theories, Barry's Boot Camp, Cycle Bars, all of these places of the world. The ones that have achieved that level of success are because they don't cater to the masses. The only one I would put on that list is maybe Orange Theory because it's very approachable depending on your fitness level. But they found this niche because it's rooted in science and who doesn't like numbers? Most people are motivated by numbers, right? But at the same time, I would say for me, I've always preferred Soul Cycle and Cycle Bar over Flywheel because I didn't like how fixated Flywheel was on the numbers and it distracted me from the music and just I would like to go spin to literally clear my head. And so I felt that if the focus was on that little board, I was only thinking about that the whole time. And then I felt I kind of failed.
Spiritual element of Flywheel.
Exactly. But it's so interesting. And I 100% agree with you. It's really unfortunate. And I think it's tricky because I think the other reason why some people are so protective and COVID has really amplified this. So anyway, with everything in the fitness industry in terms of comparing companies like a Flywheel workout versus Soul Cycle, and I know you said it doesn't have that so much of that spiritual aspect that Soul and Cycle Bar do super well. And it's okay. Everybody has their niche, right? And I think at the end of the day, that's really what people should hang their hats on as a way to not feel threatened by good instructors. Because exactly what you said, just because somebody's going to go to you doesn't mean they wouldn't check someone else out, and vice versa. And I really think, and like I said, this is why I love companies and brands like Cycle Bar. And I think every company under the Exponential umbrella does a really good job of this. Every instructor is very consistent. So it was never the type of studio I went to where I had to worry that it mattered who I was going to. They all had different vibes, but all of them worked for me. And if one of them didn't, I just didn't go to that instructor. It didn't mean I like hated the studio. But I do think there are people out there who operate that way. It's like, and that's fair. First impression, if you go somewhere, like I took this so seriously at my last job. Every time I was training a trainer, I said to them, you have to pretend there will always be a new person in this workout, because chances are there are. And they have to have the expectation that they're going to be they're going to get just as good of a workout with you as they are with me. And if they don't get that, they're not going to want to come to you. And then that will cause enough of a problem that they may not sign up for a package or whatever it is. So before we move into our lightning round, I'm curious, with a company like Studio that is so digitally forward and your transition and the timing of when you joined them, do you think that matters as much, or do you think there's a lot more loyalty to trainers? Because something I love to say, and I would love to get your take on, is people follow trainers, not gyms, right? So I would imagine that a lot of the people that now attend your classes, I'm sure had found you originally through Cycle Bar and have wanted to continue to work out with you. And they're like, great, this is my new medium to get to train with Gab. So how has that experience been maybe different for you? Do you feel less connected to some of the other coaches that you're with just because you're not seeing them in passing in a studio anymore?
It's definitely different, right? And I think that it almost elevates the experience when it does happen, where like there are crossovers that happen where I'm finishing up recording and somebody is coming in because they're about to record. And so that, but it's not something that just happens 4 times a day every day. So it becomes so much more meaningful, where it's like, sit down, like, let's chat. How are you? What's going on? Like, did you hear about this or that or whatever? It's a little bit more meaningful. And then when it comes to clients, I would almost say the same, where it used to be that I would see these people every single day. And so every single day it was kind of like, so how's it going? How's the new job? How's this? And now it's a little bit more like, I get this DM on Instagram and it's like, I just want you to know that X, Y, and Z happened. And, all of these things. And I thought of you. And it just becomes more meaningful because it's not kind of part of the day to day. And so it's different, but I've definitely found that I don't take it for granted in the same way that I used to.
I was muted. Sorry. That's super cool. No, I appreciate that. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's really nice. And I'm, excited to kind of see how fitness consumer behavior continues to evolve and change, because I would love your take on this idea too. Do you think that, I said it earlier and you we didn't really take the conversation in this direction, but cycling in a boutique setting will come back. It just will, just like any other kind of fitness. Because I think people are dying for experiential fitness, and like socially our environment has changed so much and we miss the things we were able to do before. And if we can't have the same restaurant experience, but people can figure out how to mimic the old fitness experience, people will probably pay top dollar for that too, because they want it bad enough. So what do you think about that? And what kind of implications do you think that has on your career? Do you prefer the flexibility and some of the changes that have come with being in a digital only space to the point where you think you'll never go back to an in-studio experience? Or do you think you'll move to like a hybrid?
So I see myself moving to a hybrid, to just answer your question right off the bat. And something that has really kind of resonated with me during this time is like, I forgot how much I enjoy training people one-on-one. And, so I've been doing a bit more of that, where I'm taking on some personal training clients, and I'm doing some, more like fitness oriented one-on-one training. And so for me, like, I love that. And if I'm able to transition that back to a group setting, like even a small group setting or something like that, where it's a little less performative and a little more like scientific XYZ fitness stuff, I would love to do that. Now, the CEO of our company, his name is Jason Baptiste. He's unbelievable, brilliant man. He said it really, really well. In the 80s, everybody would go to the arcade to play video games, right? Like that was the way.
I've heard this analogy on the podcast I mentioned to you earlier. It's called What the Fuck Gym Talk. And the guy who runs it, he has a studio that he's licensing now called Urban Movement. And it was kind of born out of the CrossFit world. And he interviewed someone that I work with for my own online programming. And like, it's actually, the name is very similar to studio. But he gave the arcade analogy too. And he said that if you think about it, like arcades were a thing and then they died, but they could come back at any time. So what did your CEO say?
He pretty much said the same thing. He was like, people used to go to the arcade and that was like their day out and that was like what they did for fun. And now people play video games at home and it's very connected. And so you talk to your friends on your little, I don't play video games. So
me neither.
I'm assuming.
Right.
But he was like, people do still go out to Dave and Buster's and play. Right. And it's like,
and it's because of the connection, like the community thing. It's harder to mimic that online. You have to put more effort into it.
Yeah. So it's sort of like it seems, if history is going to repeat itself in that same way, that it's going to be one of those things where instead of going out to a fitness class every single day, maybe it's something that you do 3 times a week. And the other time you're home, fitting it in when you can, as opposed to taking that 5:30 a.m. class or that 8 p.m. class because it's the only time that works with your schedule.
Right.
But I think something that for me personally as a professional and as somebody who's just constantly in pursuit of like trying to just calm the fuck down, I don't know if that's something that you're worried about too. I feel like the people who love this industry and the people who work their butts off to make it better are the ones who are going to succeed regardless of whether it's digital or in person. And like whatever way the industry goes, like I will show up and I will teach to the best of my ability and I will deliver what I've always been delivering, whether it's through screen or whether it's in person. And so like whichever way this crazy world takes us, like I'll be there. So
100%. And totally, I feel like I've had to learn how to just calm down because there's so much that we just don't know. And I've seen that in my personal life too, in deciding to leave a relationship. And it could have been really easy to just like suck it up because that's safe. And so many people do that. And it's really sad. Like I can't even begin to tell you how many people, when I did start to get vocal about my personal life and my story and I have weaved that into my brand and platform today, I got so many messages from people that said to me like, I wish I figured that out at your age, or I didn't and now I'm getting divorced, or I'm just not happy. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like I feel bad for you because I know it was super hard. And it was just the unknown piece of it was scary. But I think at the end of the day and looking back on the experience, everything was unknown because I had quit my job too. So I didn't know where my career was going. And then COVID happened. So in a lot of ways, it was probably a blessing because my job would have looked really different within 2-3 months. And I wasn't being compensated fairly, which was why I left. And I'm sure that only got worse for the person who took my place because the business model completely changed. And they had a lot of balls in the air to try to adjust and adapt. But I think I agree with you, like that hybrid model. I think for a boutique fitness studio, if they don't embrace the hybrid model, I don't think they're going to be able to survive. But I also don't think they need to like become this digital company. Like allow companies like the one you work for, let them own that space because like they created a platform and an entire brand just around that. And then if you are already a boutique brick and mortar, just use something similar as a supplement. Like you don't have to get like crazy fancy with it, right? And I love this analogy. One of my friends always talks about how if you look at online fitness and you're intimidated by this idea of like, oh my God, I have to go record all this content in order to launch an app or do something similar to what you did. And that's why I kind of asked you about your experience of recording it and what it was like and how much work it took. He always reminds people of P90X. When P90X started, it only had 12 videos. 12. That's not even 12 hours of content. And it got sold for millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. So it's just like, just go do it. Just try. Just see what happens.
And everything's a learning experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I think we're so worried about the now, and we're always like, people are going to judge me for what I'm doing now. But like, when you look back at the path that you've walked, like all those silly things that you did to get you to where you are, like nobody looks at those and is like, oh, well, 10
No.
years ago, she
Yeah.
did, you know,
And I saw the post you did, like it was maybe a week or two ago, that was like, that like you don't give a fuck about what people in high school thought of you, or like you shouldn't care about that. And then I I posted this on my stories like 2 days ago, and I think you'd find it funny. One of it was like my cousin's girlfriend. She posted this. It was like a meme or something, and it said like 13-year-old me, like 13-year-old middle school me would think I'm super cool and hot today. So I'm really proud of that. And I just thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
If you think about yourself when you're 13 and you think about like some 20-year-old or like 20 something that you thought was like super cool, like now you're in that age and place. And I've never like thought about like, oh, what I think at 13, like the girls that I thought were cool, would I think that was me today? Like, hell yeah. And that's all that matters, because I care and it's only about me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, Gab, this has been so much fun, and I've really enjoyed getting to chat with you and getting to know you. And I'm super excited to see where the rest of your journey takes you, and keep tabs on everything going on with studio. And you're hopefully, maybe we're sitting here a year from now and you've got this huge confidence coaching platform. So we will track that for sure. So we're going to wrap with the lightning round, like I mentioned at the very beginning of the show. Anything goes, quick 1-word, 2-word answers. And then I'll get you out of here in like 90 seconds. You ready?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Perfect. Okay. If you could only do one type of workout or movement for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Kettlebell training.
Kettlebells. Nice. Very versatile. What is your least favorite movement or workout?
Oof. Rowing.
Rowing. Okay.
Yeah.
Not your thing? What does it like bother your traps?
No, I just
find it like
I don't
boring?
know. Yeah. There's at no point am I ever like, wow, I'm a badass. I'm just like, wow, can I please be done?
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about running. I'm not going to lie. I've like since landed on going to Orange Theory after trying to go to every studio I could that did not want me there in Jersey. And, I like hate being on the treadmill, but it's good for me because like I know that it's like the way they structure the workout with it only being like 90-second bursts, and then you get to walk, and I get through it. I'm like, okay, I just ran a mile. I can do this.
Yeah.
I'll go pick up a barbell and deadlift 250 pounds, but I don't want to run. So it's all relative. What has been the most enjoyable part of your transition from being in a boutique studio in person to now being entirely digital?
Being able to craft my own programming. A lot of times with these corporate fitness companies, you're kind of stuck in like their, you know what I mean, their program. Totally. And so for me to be able to just like do whatever I want and kind of look at it from more of like what makes sense to me, or like compared to the other things that I've been doing, that's been super, super freeing.
And same question, but the opposite. What's been the biggest challenge?
Keeping things fresh, having absolutely no one to interact with, you know?
Totally. 100%. Yeah. So where do you find your motivation for that? You mentioned tribes within studio, but where do you look to other than just kind of like polling your Instagram followers?
I honestly just take kind of status from what's going on in my own life. Like if I have an argument with my husband, like that's going to fuel my class because it's real, it's authentic. If I'm super happy, then it's going to be like an awesome, happy, upbeat class. Sometimes I write programs that are really hard because that's going to put me in the space of like, let's go, you know? So I try to pull from things that are real. And I definitely don't get up in front of my class and say like, I had an argument with my husband and like, I'm angry.
It's just like the feeling that had come out of it.
Yeah. As long as it's real and it's authentic and it's actually what I'm experiencing, then like that's what I pull from. And I just hope that, you know, the human experience is universal enough that other people, you know, will relate to it one way or another.
How has your own personal fitness routine changed with this changing? Especially, I mean, I know you do the whole workout, and so maybe that's kind of become the supplement, but have you found yourself running more because you don't have like the traditional gym environment, or what's been different for you?
Yeah, so it's actually been the opposite, really. With a lack of racing options available right now, I'm not training for a marathon. I'm not training for a triathlon. Like, there's nothing going on.
Yeah.
So I have been focusing more on strength training, really probably more than I ever have. So I'm doing probably 75% cardio when it comes to like the classes that I'm delivering.
Sure. Okay.
And then in my own time, I am just working on strength. And there's conditioning for sure. Like, I'm doing sprints and I'm, trying to get better at stuff like that. But I am working on increasing my strength in a way that prior, when I was teaching X amount of cycling classes a week, like I really did, and training for marathons, I didn't really have the time. So I'm focusing on.
Yeah, because those are so time consuming.
Yeah.
When did you go vegan?
About 3.5 years ago.
How has that journey been for you in terms of what kinds of changes have you seen in your mental health, your body, physically, emotionally?
It's night and day. I mean, I it's a whole nother podcast to go into this.
Oh,
for sure.
Totally. I know. We didn't even talk about it. And I literally just thought about it now. And I was like, I'm just going to ask the one question because like we could do a whole topic just on that.
I'll give you like the brief rundown.
Yeah.
So before I went vegan, I was teaching 2 cycling classes a week, a Wednesday night, a Thursday morning. And by Thursday afternoon, my knees were so swollen, I needed to ice them and I couldn't really move again until Saturday. It was really bad. My best friend is a dietitian and she was like, 30 days on a plant-based diet. Tell me how you feel. So I did 30 days. Yeah.
And you obviously had a lot of inflammation if that was the consequence of what you were doing. Because that's only, you said you were only teaching 2 classes.
2.
That's not a lot compared to what you later did. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I guess I have bad knees. I was kind of like, all right, well, what am I going to do now? And so she convinced me 30 days, as she said, plant-based diet. And I said, listen, I went vegan in college once. It didn't work. All I ate was French fries and Oreos. And she was like, okay, well,
like dirty vegan.
Right. She was like, now you're going to eat a vegetable and we'll see how you do. So I really stuck to it. And that was 3.5 years ago. I never went back. I've run 10 marathons, 3 ultra marathons. I'm physical all day long and I've never felt better in my whole life.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is your husband vegan too?
He is. Yeah.
Did you guys decide to do it together or did it just kind of happen just because you were doing it and you might've been doing a lot of the cooking?
A little from column A, a little from column B. He was sort of like, you do whatever you want. I support you, but I'm not into it. Yeah. And then probably like 3 weeks in, he was sort of like, he had that kind of like aha moment where he was like, I love animals. And like, I am like, he just started to be more conscious of the idea of like, you love animals, but like this animal was alive and then it was murdered. And and I'm kind of like the opposite where I was like,
that wasn't why you did it. Yeah.
Right. But he had a totally different experience. And so he decided with that and with kind of the ease of me being completely vegan, he was like, all right, I'm going to give it a shot. And his health journey was insane. He lost like 70 pounds. He was like pre-diabetic. He had all these issues. And now he's like the healthiest he's ever been. It's unbelievable. Yeah. So we're sort of like, we'll never go back. We're big believers.
What's your favorite vegan dish? Like maybe like of a substitute of a food that you loved to eat before and like you've kind of perfected the vegan version of it.
Yeah. So I'm such a fan of like stir fry and like even like pad thai, like noodle dishes and stuff. And kind of having to like get away from that sucked for a long time. But we have perfected like a great vegan stir fry, like a great vegan
I have a restaurant for you. I actually love it, but there's a bunch of locations. I don't know how far you are from Jersey City, but that'd probably be the closest one for you to go to. And it's called Ani Ramen. It's delicious. I eat there way too many days a week.
Yes.
And most of the menu is vegan. You can add pork and chicken to any of the ramen, but their noodles don't have any egg in them. I don't know how they do it, but they're vegan and they're delicious and amazing. So you guys should check it out.
A quick trip for us. Yes, maybe we will. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. You're welcome. And last but not least, what is your shameless plug? Where can we find you? If we want to take your classes, tell us where we can access Studio as well.
Absolutely. So if you want to take my class, you're going to go to the App Store and you're going to download the app for Studio, which is called Run with Studio. So you're going to search Run with Studio. You'll see it. You download it. All my classes are on there. I teach treadmill, cycling, and strength training. And then I teach some hybrid classes too, where it's like half cycling, half strength, or half running, half strength. And then I am big on Instagram. You can hit me up at gab.bolin. That's where I do the majority of my social media-ing. But I'm on Facebook as well. Same thing, Gabrielle Bolin. And hit me up, reach out, like let's chat. I want to know, where you're coming from and what kind of fitness journey you're on,
Amazing. Thank you so much. Really appreciate having you on the show and looking forward to keeping tabs on what you do next. So
yeah,
you're welcome. I hope everyone has enjoyed this episode. As always, if you found even an ounce of benefit from it, maybe like a quote that you loved or just something that you feel like you can carry with you or someone else in your life might really enjoy, please share it. Comment on any of the social media posts around it. Tag a friend, share it on your stories, whatever, tag both of us. I will put all of your Gab's, your tags and social media pages down in the show notes so everybody can find you. And I can put the link to the app as well to make it super easy. And, leave a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you tend to listen to your podcasts. We are there. This has been another awesome episode with so much learned and so many great little takeaways. And I really appreciate your time today. I hope everyone has enjoyed it. And we look forward to linking up with our next guest on the next episode. Thanks, Gab.
Bye. Thank you.